The internal voice that calls you a fake can be permanently deleted, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. So I remember 7 years ago when I had to move back into the tiny apartment of my mother, where I was building my first coaching business from scratch, and I had a tiny room there where I could hardly turn around. And I remember lying there at night in this bed, in this tiny room, and I just had thoughts like, oh my God, I can't believe anyone will ever buy something from me. And in that moment, I noticed I need to change something. So the first shift I had to do was not only recognizing that I had imposter syndrome, but I had to be brutally honest with myself how vicious that internal voice really was. So I stopped pretending that I just had self-doubt. I faced how cruel I was to myself behind closed doors. Most people think imposter syndrome is just an occasional thought of, yeah, I feel like a fraud. But for me, it was a constant stream of thoughts like, you don't deserve this, you're not good enough, who do you think you are, you don't have anything to offer to the world. And that was a huge wake-up call for me when I noticed that. So I had to stop minimizing it and admit that this voice was destroying me from the inside. And I couldn't fix what I wasn't willing to fully acknowledge. So I did this by writing down exactly the thoughts that occurred to me on a daily basis. And I did that by first training myself during the day to always check in with myself and ask myself, okay, what was I thinking? And whenever I noticed I felt bad about myself or I felt self-doubt, I would, like when you watch a video, I would stop the pause button and go back to the former moment in that sense and really try to find out, okay, what was the thought I had or the thoughts I had that caused that bad feeling. And that is when I started to create a whole list of these negative thoughts, of this voice inside my head that told me I'm just a fraud or that I will be found out. So what I can recommend to you is first be brutally honest, and then the next thing I want you to do is to train yourself in observing your thoughts like you are a scientist. You don't have to judge these thoughts. Please don't ever judge yourself, but just observe that voice like you would observe an animal in nature. Yeah. Just casually observe it, don't judge it, and write every thought that you have noticed down. Don't try to change it on the spot. The first step is really just to acknowledge it and to really see it. And I know that might be uncomfortable or you might not want to do it. And yeah, it's painful to see how destructive this inner voice is, but believe me, without doing this, you can't make the third shift I'm going to show you in a second that changed everything for myself. And maybe you noticed that, like I did, that these thoughts, they just don't come up like once a day or twice a day. It's a constant stream of thoughts, and that is okay. You are not broken, and I show you why in a second. Just don't judge yourself. Treat yourself kindly when doing this exercise. So I want to show you what I found out, and I have my list here. And what I noticed is that I had about 5 different areas where those thoughts sabotaged me. So the first area is or was like a core unworthiness. And the thoughts that I had in that area were like, I have no value, I'm insignificant. And another one was, I'm inherently defective. Like there is something wrong with me, I'm just not quite right. Then the next area was a capability doubt. The thoughts that showed up there were like, I'm incapable or I'm a complete failure. So maybe I'm an extreme example in that way, but because of some really heavy stuff that happened in my childhood and the messages I heard about myself, I believed that I was just a complete failure. But of course, until I did this work and observed my thoughts, I never really saw how much I believed I was a failure. And that was very valuable for me to see the patterns that were behind my imposter syndrome. And this is just an example, by the way. I'm not saying that you have the exact same thoughts, but these were the things that came up for me. Then the third area were belonging fears. And what I've written down here is I had thoughts like, I don't belong here and I'm unnecessary. So I had the feeling that I'm just cut off from all the other people. Like they were all better than me. They belonged to the world. And I was just like an outsider, completely isolated. And I just don't belong. Yeah, that was the thought or the belief that I had about myself. Then the fourth area were safety concerns. And that might sound a bit weird because we don't connect imposter syndrome with fears about our safety. Yeah, it doesn't make sense when you look at it in that way. But what I discovered in myself were thoughts like it's not safe to be me or I'm being judged. And this is something that I see often. This pattern behind imposter syndrome is that we fear that we are being judged because maybe in our earlier experience when we were a child, we were judged harshly. We were not loved unconditionally, or maybe we were even punished for being ourselves. That could have happened in school or at home or with other caregivers at that time. But that was a really interesting thing that I discovered in myself. And then the last area, the fifth area, is existential questioning. So I had thoughts like, well, no one needs what I have to offer. You know, I'm extra. The world doesn't need me. I'm just, yeah, completely superfluous here. And that links back to the story I told you before when I was lying in this bed in this tiny room 7 years ago. Imagine that someone would buy my offer, and I just couldn't believe that this could ever happen. So, these are my examples, and of course, it's not enough to just recognize the thoughts, although this is a huge breakthrough when you do that. But there's a third shift that I did. And what I did was I didn't just try to rewrite those thoughts. Like, for example, the thought I have no value, I just didn't sit on my desk and wrote 20 times, well, I have value, or I didn't just affirm like the opposite of it, that I have value, because I noticed that these techniques just don't work deep enough. And the work that I did for the last 10 years actually in total was I studied how the subconscious works. And the thoughts that I have discovered, the thoughts that I mentioned before, these were just my identity stories. These are stories about who I am, what's possible for me, the place that I have in this world. So what I did was, because I noticed that you can't think your way out of these stories. Yeah. And I'm sure if you have tried affirmations or mindset work, you notice that as well. You can't outthink imposter syndrome. And the crazy thing is, these identity stories are not stored in your logical brain. So I knew in my conscious mind that that offer that I was selling was extremely valuable. And still, my imposter syndrome couldn't accept the value of what I had to offer. So it was like I had two different voices inside my head that were like fighting with each other. My conscious mind knew like my offer is valuable and it's going to work out, but my imposter syndrome voice told me that no one's gonna buy it, I have no value, like who do I think I am, and so on. So you can't think your way out of those identity stories. This is just something that will frustrate you and just waste your energy. What I noticed is that I had to work at the identity level, at the subconscious level, because imposter syndrome thoughts aren't just thoughts that happen just by accident. They're identity programs running automatically. And I had to reprogram those subconscious stories, not just challenge conscious thoughts. And after I rewired those identity stories, this imposter syndrome voice quieted completely. And because I worked on the root cause, not just with my conscious thoughts, like here, if this is the surface level of the work you did before, I went deeper, and this is where everything changed. And because I worked at this deep subconscious level, it didn't take long for the imposter voice to go away completely. It took about 1 to 2 months. So here's an example. When I rewired, I have no value, to I'm inherently valuable, everything for me changed. I finally completely believed that my work has value for the world. This internal fight between these two voices, my logical mind and my subconscious mind, stopped. I started attracting clients and made over $500,000 in revenue in this first business that I built back then. And the imposter syndrome never came back again. So the full process requires specific techniques I can't teach in a video, but you can start right now. I want you to write down your personal thoughts that come up whenever you feel like this imposter voice telling you that you are a fraud, or that you will be found out, or that you are fake. And the most important thing to do here is to be really honest with yourself. I know this is going to hurt a little bit. It's uncomfortable to face yourself like this. Maybe this is the first time in your life that you are facing your inner demons, so to speak, but this will change everything for you and will end this battle, because if you don't do this work, imposter syndrome will haunt you for the rest of your life. And the other thing that is also really important here is these thoughts will sound illogical. Maybe you have achieved a lot of milestones in your life. Maybe you're a really successful person, and the thoughts that come up don't match your external achievements. And that is completely normal, because you have to remember that those imposter thoughts are thoughts that come from a deeper programming that happened decades ago. And it's normal that it feels illogical, but please still write them down, the thoughts as they come. Don't judge them. Don't judge yourself for them, for having them, but write them down. And when you see that list alone, this will start this process of deleting imposter syndrome permanently. So here's what I realized during my transformation. Your subconscious is either your greatest ally or your biggest saboteur. There's no middle ground. And once you unlock its true power, you will effortlessly rise to the top 1% in your field without bleeding money, time, or energy because of imposter thoughts or self-doubt. But here's the thing, most high achievers don't even realize that their subconscious is sabotaging them right now. So watch this video next, where I'll show you the 5 signs your subconsciousness is rejecting your success.